I'm really excited to be here. Obviously, when I got this job 13 years ago, I said it was my dream job and destination job. I still feel the same way today as I felt then, and I really like this team coming up. It's going to be a fun team to coach. We got great kids, selfless, and I think it's going to be a team a lot like last year's in the sense that early we may struggle a little bit. We've got some returning guys that got to step up into different roles and be everyday guys when maybe last year they were pieces of the puzzle. And so as that transition occurs, there may be some bumps in the road. And but we're a resilient group. We're a tough group, and I like the pieces that we have together. But I think by the end of the season, I think this team can be really, really dangerous and can certainly compete in the Pac-12 conference. And it's going to be a fun journey. Like I said, there's going to be some adversity that hits us. We're obviously without Evan Batty, one of the best leaders that I've ever coached, and a fifth-year, five-year guy for us. So he's gone. So guys like Tristan Da Silva, Luke O'Brien, Nick Clifford, KJ Julian, all the returning guys have got to really kind of step up the leadership aspect. So I think that's the biggest question mark with this team as I look forward is where will the leadership come from when the waters get rough, because we know they will at some point. And but I got a lot of confidence in our players, so I'm excited. With that, I'll open it up.
Tad, you've mentioned a couple times this preseason and just now that this team could profile like last year, trying to gel early before maybe you hit your stride. Last year, a lot of those new pieces you were integrating were freshmen, guys right out of high school. This year, a lot of it's older guys that have played college basketball. I know you're only a week or so into practice here, but has that learning curve been accelerated at all because it is older guys?
Yeah, a little bit. I think the guys you're talking about are Javon Hadley, who's played 2 years of college basketball, one at Northeastern, one at the junior college level at Indian Hills, which is very high-level basketball for junior college. And then Jalen Gabadon and Ethan Wright are two Ivy League guys. So I think those guys are picking things up a little bit quicker than a freshman would, and I think that's a positive. They're still trying to understand what our standards are, what Colorado basketball is all about, but they're quick learners. They're really smart players, and we're gonna need all three of those guys at some point this year to fill in roles. So, yeah, as we've talked about in the past, we're gonna use we don't recruit a lot of junior college players here, but Javon made a lot of sense given the situation we were in last spring after a curveball was thrown at us. But we got a good player, and the Ivy League guys, Ethan and Jalen, we've been really excited about them from the get-go. So really like those three, and it's nicer to have those guys than maybe three freshmen early, but will that translate to us winning games? I sure as heck hope so.
Coach, you mentioned the slow start last year. Has that been kind of a point of emphasis for you, like, hey, we really got to get things tightened up, especially with so many games away from home early in the schedule?
Well, look, I've known this summer what we've had, so we used our summer access months and we used this fall to do a lot more installing of offense. And the defense, we kind of waited until practice started here a week or so ago. But yeah, we wanted to accelerate that as best we could because we knew what's facing us with our schedule, and we saw what happened last year. Last year we had Costa Rica. We had 10 practices, and we still struggled out of the gate. Maybe that was due to Pat's point about plugging freshmen into those roles, and this year we've got some more experienced guys. But we really tried to accelerate that using the summer and the fall to get a jump start on that, and hopefully that will translate. I do feel like we're practice number 6 today or 7 it was, and we're farther along offensively than we ever have been at this point in terms of having stuff in. Now executing and at the level we need to execute at, that's a different story. But we're on pace, I think. We'll learn a lot over the next 3 weeks or so. We'll have a couple inter-squad scrimmages. We've got a closed door scrimmage, and then we've got the exhibition game with the charity game with Nebraska. So we'll learn a lot over the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Hey, Coach, we're talking to Jalen a little bit. He said that when you were recruiting him, you didn't even talk basketball. You just talked about leadership and stuff like that. I guess, how much does Jalen and Ethan, when they come in from the Ivy League, how much does it improve your program IQ, and does it make you just a smarter on-court, off-court team?
Absolutely. Yeah, look, Jalen is a really bright player, as Ethan is. They're both, high-level thinkers, and there's probably 12 to 15 players in the Ivy League that could play in the Pac-12 or the Big 12. I mean, Ivy League basketball's good now. And they're two of them. They were two of the best players in the league last year, two of the top 6, I would say, in the homework that we did. But yeah, Jalen is a guy who's very selfless. He's a team guy. He wants to do whatever is going to help the team win. He was the defensive player of the year in the Ivy League 2 years ago. He can make an open shot. He can slash to the basket. So he brings us great versatility. And when I recruited Jalen, again, he's involved with a company in Denver. And so that made Colorado make a lot of sense for him, and so we're lucky to have him, and he's going to help us a lot this year. Ethan is as well. Ethan's a good shooter, good rebounder, sneaky athletic guy that maybe don't judge a book by its cover kind of player, because he's an effective guy. So really happy to have both of them.
Hey, Coach. You spoke a little bit about the two guys you were just talking about. How are you expecting them to be leaders on this team? These coming in from other schools, new squad, younger guys. How are you expecting them to fit in leadership roles?
Well, number one, I think they have to believe that they belong, and that's something that as we get closer to game time, I've talked to them both about that a little bit. But look, they come from great programs. I mean, Princeton's a winning program. Yale is a winning program. They've been really well coached. So I want them to believe and use the experiences that they've had at those programs and relay that to our younger players, because they have been through the battles and been through the wars. And different league, maybe a different level, but there's some good teams in the Ivy League. So I want them to believe that the experiences that they bring to the table are valuable and worthy, and they can't be afraid to open their mouths. And right now they're kind of checking me out, and they're not quite 100% sure what I expect yet. But we'll get there, and we got to get there quickly. And but again, both really smart players and really good kids. And I don't know if the leadership is going to come so much from, hey, this is how we've done things in the past, as it is like, this is what you need to do to be successful at this level. And they got to believe that, because I believe in them.
Tad, as KJ makes this jump from freshman to sophomore year, kind of the same Jabari Walker style role change, he talked a lot today about his consistency. How does he get to that point where he is consistently delivering those performances that we saw kind of at the end of last season? Yeah,
I think the big thing with KJ we've talked about is limiting, not eliminating, but limiting, his turnovers. I think that's the and becoming a more consistent, perimeter shooter, which he has become in the summer months. He's spent a lot of time on his jump shot, and he's, it looks smooth, and so I think he's made that jump in his game. Now it's got to translate to the games, obviously, but KJ's a gamer. You guys saw that last year. He's not afraid of the moment. He's a competitive guy. He loves basketball. I think the biggest thing with KJ is he's got to bring the energy, open his mouth, lead this team. Last year, again, Evan was that guy who was kind of directing traffic from the 5 spot, but he's gone. Now we got Tristan, who's doing a great job with that, but KJ can, especially in the position that he's playing, the point guard position or the scoring guard, whatever you want to call it, because he and Julian will play together some this year as well. So they didn't play as much together last year as they will this year. But KJ's biggest thing is just limiting his turnovers. He's always going to have some turnovers because he's plays so aggressively and with reckless abandon. He's just got to be really smart and one can't lead to two and two can't lead to three. He might have one here or there, but becoming a consistent decision maker.
In regards to Quincy Allen and Javon Ruffin, just where do you think they are in terms of their development?
Yeah, it's those two guys. It's interesting. I see flashes of both those guys in practice. Quincy will make plays that just make your jaw drop. He's so athletic. He's so bouncy. He can block shots. And Javon has had some really good moments as well in practice and making really smart basketball plays. He's a big guard who can handle it, can shoot it, can pass it. So I think the biggest thing with both those guys, I look at them still as freshmen, even though they're technically redshirt freshmen, but they're not the typical redshirt freshman. The typical redshirt freshman practiced their whole freshman year, and now it's game time, and they've learned a lot. Well, those guys didn't practice. They were on the sidelines hurt. It's a lot different being on the sidelines trying to learn and being on the floor trying to learn. They're on the floor trying to learn. Now, terminology-wise, expectation-wise, what our standards are in this program, they should have a feel for that because they were here last year. But they're still true freshmen on the floor because they didn't get a chance to practice last year. So both of them have shown flashes, much like Joe Hurlburt. And today was the first time we actually got R.J. Smith a few reps in practice. He's coming back from his knee injury now, which can't wait to get him on the floor. It was great to see him today. So, there's two true freshmen on our team, but really there's four if you throw those two guys in there as well.
Hi, Coach. Similar to KJ, Julian Hammond's making that jump from freshman to sophomore.
Yep.
What are you seeing from him from practice, and what are his contributions?
Yeah, Julian is he's that quiet guy that sometimes gets overlooked, and probably the most steady, consistent guard that we have right now. KJ is the most explosive and can make plays that not many other guards his size can make. But Julian is rock solid, steady. He's really improved his shooting. One of the challenges we gave Julian in the offseason was to become a better finisher inside the arc, on his drives, on his pull-ups, on his floaters at the rim. And he's done a better job of that as well. But it'll be interesting to see, again, when the games start. But I've got a lot of confidence in Julian. Julian's kind of got that it factor that you can't pinpoint what makes him effective. We had a function last night, and when I was introducing Julian, and I don't mean this in any disrespect at all, I'm not sure he's great at anything, but he's really good at everything. He's a really good shooter. He's a really good passer. He's a really good ball handler. He's a good decision maker. He's a good basketball player. He's a good defender. So we just need to keep building on those things and develop and hopefully become great at something. But I got a lot of confidence in Julian because he's got that it factor that you can't coach.
Tad, all of your returning guys have mentioned Evan Batty unprompted, talking about the impact that he had on them. Is there kind of a residual effect of Evan Batty in this program?
I hope so. I hope there's a residual effect. I mean, I look at guys, like Luke and Neek and Tristan, who are juniors, been here. This is their third year. They had 2 years with Evan. They had 1 year with McKinley and Deshaun and Dallas and that group. So hopefully they learned what those guys brought to this program. We talked to them at the end of practice today about consistency and being an everyday guy. And those guys were everyday guys, and that's what we need. We need some guys to step up and be everyday guys. And I hope that, they saw what Evan brought. Look, there's only one Evan Batty. I'm not going to expect any of these guys to be Evan Batty. He's one in a million. Actually, he's one of a kind. But he's gone. And so hopefully the guys that were with him learned from him and learned what he brought in terms of a selflessness and a team-first attitude. And he was a thumb guy first. He never pointed the finger. He always looked internally. And then, if he was doing his job and his teammates weren't doing their job, he wasn't afraid to call them up and say, hey, you got to step your game up. So again, that's leadership, and that's what we're going to need. 1 or 2 or hopefully 3 of our returning guys to do this year.
back here. Coach, the returner guys that I also talked to, they were also talking about how last year kind of left a bad taste in their mouth, the way that they went out. Can you talk about how they're going to turn the page this year, and then why this young group can make a run, and why you believe that they actually can do that?
Yeah, I think, one of the things we can learn from last year, again, we have control over one thing, and that's the Colorado Buffaloes in this program. We don't have control over the rest of the league and what they do. Last year's team was hurt by the league's performance in November and December in the non-conference. We finished 4th in the league. It's the highest we've finished. That's usually you finish 4th in the Power 5 league and you're in the NCAA tournament. We weren't. We were on the outside looking in because of our performance in November and December and the league's performance. So we can't control the league. We can control ourselves. So hopefully what our guys learned is, hey, that game against UC Riverside is pretty darn important. That game at against Southern Illinois in the Virgin Islands, that was an important game. We tricked it off. We lost it, and that hurt us. The opportunity to play Tennessee and Nashville, that's a heck of an opportunity for this program. So hopefully our young guys have learned you have to embrace every game. And sometimes the games that you lose in November and December come back and haunt you in March. And if we can take that to heart and understand every one of those opportunities is a chance to improve our chances at the end of the year to be an NCAA tournament team, then we better take advantage of them.
You got a lot of size on the wing this year, but not a ton on the interior. What have you seen from Lawson that makes you confident that he can man the middle for you guys, and what are you expecting from him this year?
Yeah, Lawson, again, freshman year to sophomore year, he missed the last 15 games of the season last year. He was really coming on. I think the biggest thing with Lawson is his physical development, that he had a great summer in the weight room with Steve Englehart, our strength and conditioning coach, and that's going to pay dividends for him this year. And then mentally, Lawson's a guy that's, I've said it before, he's very difficult on himself, and so when things don't go his way, sometimes the head goes down, the shoulders slump. We can't have that this year. He's got to be able to play through mistakes. And, it's when you got Evan Batty there and then Lawson's struggling, it's easy to have a fallback guy, right? Well, we don't have a fallback guy this year. Evan's gone. So Lawson's going to have to play through mistakes, even though we can play Joe Hurlburt there if things get tough, and we can also play Tristan, at the 5 as well and go small. But Lawson's going to play. He's going to play through mistakes, and I think he's going to grow and develop into a really, really good big man in the Pac-12 conference. So, but it's the CU fans did not see the real Lawson Lovering last year, and again, he's not a finished product yet. It takes big guys a while to develop and grow, but he's on the right track. And he's a great ball screen defender. He can guard the ball. He's a good rim protector, being 7 feet tall. Not a great perimeter shooter yet. Can finish, though, around the basket, has good hands. But defensively, he can be a force for us.
You got a special one in McKinley. I'm telling you something you don't know. But, KJ says he talks to McKinley all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was wondering, are there any similarities? And do you ever have to warn KJ, we don't need you to be McKinley, we need you to be you?
Yeah. KJ never played with McKinley. But I think he's got great respect for him, as anybody that knows McKinley does. And so, yeah, I think it's important that KJ's KJ. And I don't, when he talks to McKinley, I don't think it's necessarily trying to emulate him, but just learn from him. And because KJ's got some things that McKinley didn't have. And McKinley's got a few things that KJ doesn't have. So if he can incorporate some of those things, I look at McKinley, the kind of rebounder he was for a guard his size, his ability to get through ball screens and be a force defensively. Because KJ's got unbelievable quickness and speed. He could be a menace defensively like McKinley was. So those are the things that I hope, as he has those conversations with McKinley, as he incorporates the things into his game that maybe weren't there, and takes that from McKinley. Because from a speed and athleticism and open floor, he's really, really dynamic player, as we've seen in spurts. He just needs to become that everyday guy that McKinley was, and he's on that right track. He really is. He's had a good first week of practice, and I'm encouraged by KJ's development thus far.
Luke O'Brien saw a lot of time off the bench last year. What are you
Yep.
expecting out of him this year?
I think, again, Luke's ability to be a consistent, how is he going to impact the game? His ability. Luke was our best shooter this summer. You know, we've got this system in place. It's a shot tracker where they can, there's a chip in the ball and a chip in their shoe, and every time they take a shot, it's tracked. And so as we, in our, again, summer access hours, you know, had those chips on, he was by far our best shooter this summer. So he can really stroke it. He's a more confident, mature player. I think he's got good size now. He's really developed his body. He can help us rebounding. You know, one of the questions we get all the time is, how are you going to replace Jabari Walker's rebounding? Well, hopefully Luke O'Brien can give us 2 or 3 more a game. Hopefully Nick Clifford can give us 2 or 3 more a game. Hopefully, you know, our guards, KJ and Julian, can get 1 or 2 more a game. Hopefully Tristan can up his numbers. You know, so I think rebounding and being a consistent, you know, everyday guy that is now a junior and plays like a junior. And I think that's the challenge. A lot of times my expectations of freshmen are usually not very high. They're a little bit higher as sophomores. If you're a junior in this program, I expect a lot out of you. I expect you to know what your job is and to hold your teammates accountable to that. And I always say freshmen want to play, sophomores want to score. If you're a junior and you don't want to win, or a senior and you don't want to win, we're going to have problems. So what is Luke going to do to affect winning for us? There's a lot of things he can do: rebounding, defending, making open shots. He just needs to be Luke O'Brien and not try to be, you know, everything to everybody, and just concentrate on the things he does well, because he does some things really, really well for us.
Tad, I've always been so appreciative of the skill set that Tristan brings to the table.
Yep.
And because Jabari was always so productive, I kind of sense that maybe sometimes he deferred a little bit in that regard. With Jabari not being here, with him being now an upperclassman, are you encouraging him in terms of his productivity to maybe take more of that load?
Absolutely, Mark. Yeah, it's a great point. I felt like this even last spring when Jabari was, you know, making his decision. Maybe there was no decision. I don't know. Maybe he knew he was leaving all the time. But I told Tristan, if Jabari does leave, in fact, it's going to benefit you personally, because you're going to be able to step into a bigger role. And not that he and Jabari didn't play together, they did. But you're right, Jabari was so productive, and Tristan is such a team player. But now, being a junior, like we talked about with Luke, like we've, you know, talked about with Neek, those 3 guys now have to play like juniors. And I almost look at them as like seniors, even though they're not. Thank God they each have, you know, another year. But Tristan is far and away, I mean, he is our most consistent, and his intelligence, his knowledge of the game, his feel for the game, he's much more comfortable and confident now. He's going to have I expect him to be a first-team All-Pac-12 player. I really do. If we can win enough games, that will happen, because Tristan's going to be on the floor. He's going to be on the floor a lot. He can play multiple positions. He can guard multiple positions. Having a guy like him as a coach, makes you feel good.
Coach, you lose your top 3 3-point shooters from last year in terms of volume. Is there anything that you're tinkering with specifically to generate those looks, or do you expect that to come naturally with guys stepping into those bigger roles?
Yeah, I think this team has a chance to be a good shooting team. I really do. Ethan Wright can shoot the ball. Jalen Gabadon can shoot the ball. Tristan is a much improved shooter. We talked about Julian, KJ improving his jump shot. Quincy Allen can make shots. Luke is a great shooter. Neek's we've got multiple good shooters. So I don't worry about losing our top 3 3-point shooters, but we did lose our top 3 scorers as well. So that scoring production is going to have to be upped. You know, Tristan's going to, his numbers will go up. KJ's numbers will go. And it's not one guy. It's just kind of everybody chipping in, because this is a unique team, I think, in that we've got. I look at our team, and you know, I could say we could have 6 to 7, maybe 8 guys that could be our leading scorers on any given night. And usually you say, well, we're going to have 1 or 2 or 3 guys who are going to lead us in scoring tonight. Well, this team is going to be really well balanced, I think, and we'll figure out the roles as we evolve, as the season, you know, plays out. But we got multiple guys that can make shots and multiple guys that can score the ball. We just got to make sure we're defending and rebounding consistently and keeping us in games, and then hopefully make enough shots to get us over the top.
Tad, now that you don't have that proven extension of yourself on the court like you had with Ken and in some respects Evan last year, we've talked a lot about how that changes the players and how they have to step up in a leadership role. How does that affect you as a head coach? I talked to KJ prior, and he said he sees a more patient Tad Boyle.
Well, I appreciate KJ's comments, and maybe that comes with age, wisdom. I don't know what it comes with, but I look at guys like KJ, like Julian, that are playing the point guard position, and a guy like Tristan. You know, Evan was so unique in that I could go to Evan and say, okay, Evan, we had a bad practice today. You got to fix it. And he'd fix it. And so the next day we wouldn't have a bad practice. I'm going to have to do the same thing with Tristan or KJ or Julian or whoever. And that's what we're trying to figure out right now. Who has influence in the locker room? Who's not afraid to open up their mouth and maybe ruffle a few feathers if they need to be ruffled? You have to have that on your team. If you don't, it all falls on me, and that's my job. But I've always said player-led teams are so much more powerful and successful than coach-led teams. And so those guys got to take ownership. They got to take leadership responsibilities. They got to be willing to open up their mouths and talk, and something that we're in the process of hopefully developing. But we better develop it pretty quick.
Okay, Craig, go ahead, and we got time for one more question after Craig.
Yeah, Ted, y'all are obviously only about a week into practice here, so it's still really early. But based on what you know about your guys, about the guys you have on this team, and from what you've seen so far, what traits or qualities do you see in this group that maybe some of your better teams here at CU had?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question until we get really tested. I mean, I think every team as you go into the season has hopes and aspirations and dreams and goals. And the only time you find out about yourself is when the you-know-what hits the fan, right? And that hasn't happened to us yet. It hasn't happened to anybody yet. So you don't know that until it happens. But I think, what we've talked about up to this point, the leadership, is there going to be somebody that's going to be able to rally the troops in that locker room when things get tough and bounce back. One of the traits about the team 2 years ago when we had all of our seniors that I thought was as positive and something I respected about those guys. I don't think we ever lost 2 games in a row except once in the season. So we always bounced back after a win. There was, I think, a back-to-back loss, one at home and then one to Oregon on the road. But the Oregon loss on the road was not because we didn't play we just couldn't make a shot that night. We lost by 2. But we were resilient. And so resiliency, I think, with teams is really important. And I think this team can be a resilient team. We'll find out. I don't know the answer to that yet, but I think it will. And because we got some guys that care. They care about the team. They want to win. We talk all the time about when we put the jersey on, we represent more than just ourselves. We represent the university. We represent the athletic department. We represent Boulder, Colorado, the state of Colorado. We represent every former player that's worn that uniform. There's a lot of responsibility that goes with putting that thing on, and we better take that seriously. And if we do and we own it, I like our chances.
We'll actually go Tyler and Monica real quick.
Tad, we've talked about obviously the losses of Evan and Jabari, but also losing a guy like Eli Parquet, just your number one defender for the last couple of years. Obviously, Neek last year got to experience that when Eli was hurt a little bit. How much are you expecting him to be ready to step into that role full time this year as your primary wing defender?
Yeah, I think we got a couple guys that can fill that role. I think Neek's certainly one of them. Neek's got the length. He's got the experience now. His body's gotten stronger. Neek, again, much like we talked about with Luke, he's got the ability to affect the game in a lot of different ways, defensively, offensively, ball in his hands, slashing, cutting, getting out into transition, and defensively. I think Javon Hadley is a guy who brings unbelievable competitive spirit and energy to our team defensively. So I look at Javon and Neek as guys that could fill that kind of defensive stopper role. But look, we want all of our guys to have that mindset, not just one. Now, Eli was pretty special because he was so strong and athletic, and he kind of bought into that, you know. And so we're going to need somebody to buy into that. But we don't want just one-dimensional players. We want multi-dimensional players. But certainly Neek and Javon Hadley defensively right now can do a lot of things for us because they're both long and athletic. But Javon Hadley's energy level and toughness it's going to help us this year.
Hi, Tad. I
Hey,
just
Mark.
wanted to ask you if you could roughly go over what the conference looks like to you this year. What can we expect?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't even know who's, you know, our rosters, you know, what is it, September? Oh, it's October now, so I guess Oregon has started practice. But, you know, they're in the quarter system. Sometimes they've added guys in third week of September that, you know, pop up. I don't know if that's happened. I don't think it has. But to be honest with you, my head has been dialed into Colorado and what we're doing. I do know, you know, with UCLA's returning players, Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell, I mean, I can't wait till they graduate. You know, they're really good. They're going to be good. Arizona's, you know, going to be good this year. I mean, I think USC's talented. I mean, but there's a lot of teams, Arizona State and Washington, who've kind of retooled. I think there's question marks. I don't know. Washington State's had some turnover. I know the coaching in this league is really, really good from top to bottom. I don't have a feel for the talent level yet. I'll get a feel for that more as the games start and I start watching scores. And, you know, obviously we'll be dialed into what Arizona State and Washington because we got them in December a little bit more. But the rest of the league, I'm not even thinking about them right now. But I do know, you know, the usual suspects in Oregon and Arizona and UCLA will be really solid. And I think, you know, we'll find out a lot about our league, you know, again in November, December.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll have Coach Payne here in about 7 minutes. So thank you, Coach.
Okay, thank you. He's doing awesome. He's a sophomore at Pomona College. Yeah, 6'8". Yeah, yeah. He was newcomer of the year in their league last year. He had a great freshman year. Yeah, he's doing well.
I was on with this